Steak is always a good idea, and as such, each time you buy a beautiful ribeye steak, the last thing you want to do is mess it up because it can be quite expensive. So today I'm going to show you different ways you can cook the perfect ribeye steak. So let's just jump right in. Today I'm gonna show you how to cook a ribeye steak on the stove, in the oven, in the grill. I'm also gonna show you how to make a sous vide steak. Everyone talks about immersion circulators, but not all of us have them at home. And then finally, because we have family coming in a bit, I'm gonna show you how to make a perfect standing ribeye roast. So I have a total of 3 hours to cook all of this, so I have to get going. And also, before you go off in the comments telling me that something is wrong, this is just the way I like to cook it, and it's the way I like to eat it. So when it comes to cooking, always do what you know is best for you.
So we're going to be working with multiple cuts of ribeye here. Some 300-gram steaks cut to about 1.3 inches thick, a bone-in ribeye close to 600 grams with a thickness of about 2 inches, and a standing rib roast weighing at around 2 kilos. This will be really important as it will affect your cook time, so always be conscious of size. When preparing steak, I like to tell people that it's a 2-day process. You need to first thaw it in the fridge, only if it's frozen of course, and then salt it generously all over using kosher or cooking salt, not fine salt, and leave your meat uncovered in the fridge for at least 12 hours. This will help deliver a great crust while cooking and will really concentrate that flavor. Fine salt isn't necessarily more salty, it's just finer, so you won't be able to control the amount as easily visually. Once that's done, you're good to go. Let's start with the easiest one, just a pan-fried steak. You won't be able to cook a good steak on a non-stick pan. My personal favorite is cast iron, however, if you don't have a good exhaust in your house, it'll get way too smoky. The next in line for me are stainless steel pans. This one here has a copper base, or an enameled coated cast iron pan. Next, take out your steak from the fridge at least an hour before cooking. This applies to everything I'll be showing you today. You can then season it again with some salt and pepper before cooking. I personally prefer not adding any pepper because I don't want it to burn. I will only add it when the steak is done. Let's get a pan hot first and then add in some neutral oil like canola. You don't want to do the reverse, or you don't want to heat up oil in a pan as you might get something that will stick too harshly. Once your pan is smoking, you can add in your steak. Now, 2 schools of thought here. First, cooking times will depend on the thickness of your meat. For mine, I could either go for 3 minutes on one side and then flip it for 2 minutes on the other side on a medium hot pan. Or I can flip it every minute, a technique used by Heston Blumenthal, on a really hot pan. Apparently, it helps generate a nice crust as well. Whatever you do, when you have 1 minute of cooking left, throw in a tablespoon or 2 of butter, 2 is always better, a crushed clove of garlic, and some fresh thyme or rosemary, and quickly baste your steak. This will give it so much flavor. Take out your meat and let it rest for 5 minutes. I went for a medium steak here, so I took it out at around 60 degrees, and the resting residual heat should bring it up 3 to 5 degrees more. Now for a sous vide steak. It's a technique that's used very commonly nowadays. The idea is to bring the whole steak to a perfect internal temperature in a water bath before frying it up and giving it a crust. To do this, you will need to hold your steak at a certain temperature of water for at least 1 hour, and you usually need an immersion circulator to do that. However, if you really want to do it at home without one, you can. Start by placing your ribeye in a Ziploc bag with some butter and a crushed clove of garlic. Take as much air as possible out of the bag using the water displacement method. Heat up some water in a pot, make sure not to overfill it, and bring it to about 50 degrees. Place your bag in and leave it in there for 1 hour. This is where it gets complicated. You'll want to turn off, turn on, move your pot around, or even add some cold or even hot water to keep the temperature steady. It's not a lot of fun. I checked it maybe every 5 minutes to make sure the temperature didn't drop too much or didn't go too high when the fire was on. When done, take the steak out of the bag, get a pan on the stove, nice and smoking, add in some oil, and very quickly sear the steak on both sides, just to give it some color. For our bone-in or thicker pieces of meat, you're going to bring a pan up to medium heat, add in some oil, sear it for about 2 minutes on both sides, and then place it in the oven at 220 degrees until the internal temperature of the meat reaches 55 degrees. I love cooking thicker pieces of meat because I find it so much easier to get right, because you can really stick a thermometer in the thickest part of the meat and be very safely confident as to knowing when to take it out of the oven.
This for me is one of my favorite techniques, that with a little bit of chimichurri. Chimichurri is so fresh, but the meat is just so fatty and tender, so that balance is amazing. I like my meat a bit on the bloodier, rarer side, and this for me is like a perfect kind of rare to medium rare. Delicious.
Now time for a grilled steak. I'm honestly not a fan of grilling steaks. I only do this when I'm cooking a whole slab. However, it does have interesting flavor. You can just season it with some salt or try out a dry rub. Just mix together 1 tablespoon of each of the following: dried rosemary, smoked paprika, garlic powder, onion powder, za'atar, or any other spice blend you fancy. Then we're gonna add a pinch of salt, some freshly cracked pepper, and a pinch of sugar. Rub this all over your steak. When grilling, if you're not confident being able to tell the doneness of your meat by touch, have a thermometer ready, as the heat off a grill will not be as predictable as a stove. Personally, if I'm going to grill something, I want to taste that fire and smoke, so I like to bring it up to a point where I can really see a nice charred crust. So the only thing to be conscious of when you are barbecuing, well, me personally, I like to keep one side really high and one side on kind of like medium-low heat. So, and each time I see flare-ups or any flame, I just try to move the steak so I don't get too much flame on it. Because at the end of the day, I don't want to burn the steak. So just really, this is on the grill, it's one of the most temperamental, depending on the weather outside, depending on the wind, and you don't want to close it. So just keep it up like this, high heat, and then low heat, low heat, until you've got the perfect cooking temp that you're looking for.
So I'm currently still in Australia, and I bought all the meat from 5 Founders from a local butcher shop here in Melbourne. And when I tried it, it was tender, it was tasty, it was so delicious. So I sent some to my brother-in-law in the Philippines, Nico Bolzico, with who we have an importation business called Bolzico Beef. So we carry beef from New Zealand, that's Wagyu grass-fed beef from Argentina, some beef from France, and now some beef from Australia. So we actually shipped a bunch of this same beef that I'm cooking with today to the Philippines, and we currently distribute it with Bolzico Beef and our butchery called Chingolo. All the details, if you're in the Philippines, if you want to order our beef, will be in the description box below.
The standing rib roast follows the exact same process as our other steaks. Salted, left in the fridge for at least 12 hours up to 48 hours, then taken out an hour before cooking. To coat it, we're gonna mince 4 cloves of garlic and 3 tablespoons of minced herbs. I'm using rosemary, thyme, and sage. I'm gonna mash all of this with some butter, salt, and olive oil. You don't need to mash if you're not an idiot like me, and if you bring out your butter to room temperature first. This will coat the whole slab. Place it in a roasting pan and that goes in the oven at 120 degrees for a couple of hours. Yes, this is really low. What we're looking to do here is bring the internal temperature up to 50 degrees or slightly lower. Then we're gonna let this rest.
With our standing rib roast here, very simple. We've been resting it now for about 30 to 45 minutes. The internal temp, we're making one, we're gonna try to make one medium rare and the other one more on the medium side because a lot of people who are coming to lunch today don't necessarily like really bloody meat. And so the idea is we had 47 and then 52. 52 I believe on this one, 47 on this one. So we put it in the oven at as high as it goes. So I'm at 250 centigrades and then that's gonna go in for 10 minutes. Just to give us some beautiful color and some Maillard reaction on the meat. And then hopefully when we slice into it, we're gonna get a nice cooking temp like what we wanted. With all of this, don't leave it up to chance. Always use a meat can't talk because I'm so hungry. A meat thermometer. It is probably one of the best investments that you'll do.
After 10 minutes in a really hot oven and letting it rest for another 10 minutes, you should be good to go. Time to slice. What we're looking for here is an evenly pink slice of meat without much of a brown outer layer. This is basically perfect. I'm generally just a salt and meat guy, but from time to time I like having a little sauce. If you want something fresh and tangy, a chimichurri is very easy to make. Mince 3 cloves of garlic, a bunch of parsley with hard stems removed, some fresh oregano, 2 small seeded chilies, the zest of half a lemon, the juice of half a lemon, enough extra virgin olive oil to cover everything, a little bit of red wine vinegar, some salt, and some pepper. For something a little richer, a nice quick red wine mushroom sauce. Start off by using any pan you use to cook your steak in. Now, you can either start by deglazing the pan by adding red wine at this point, but I actually like making the roux first from this fat, so it's really up to you. All those juices are gonna be cooked with some butter. We're gonna let the butter brown just a tiny little bit before adding in some flour and whisking everything together until smooth. This will create a roux. We're then gonna add in our red wine and let that cook on high heat for about 2 minutes before adding in some beef or chicken stock. Let that simmer for about 15 minutes. In another pan, you probably have some steak juices here also. Fry off some onions and garlic for 3 minutes before adding your mushrooms. Once everything is really nice and soft, you can add that to your red wine mix. Let all of this simmer until nicely thickened. All you need now is some friends, family, and a good glass of red wine.
One day she'll sit at the table.
Is it good, Dahlia? The meat's good, huh? Yum. You're being good. Ah, what are you doing?
Super yummy. Delicious.
How's the meat?
Very good.
So eloquent.
How's the meat?
How's the meat?
Very nice.
There.
Tastes Aussie made.
There.
Make sure to check out the next video where I'll show you how you can use the leftovers in 2 quick recipes, a beautiful ramdon and a steak rice.
So if you're in Manila and you want to try some of the beef that I'm cooking today and all the other cuts that we have, I'll put all the details in the description box below for Bolzico Beef and for Chingolo. Peace.